Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad. Smash the like button if you love me. Subscribe if you're new. Please have your say, and a very warm welcome to Friday. Yes, we made it to Friday again. Friday's edition of the DC Universe Daily. We've got a few subjects to get through today, so let's get on with it. So when James Gunn announced he was going to be co-CEO of DC Studios, he spoke about stepping into a fractious environment. But what did he mean by fractious environment? He was talking about the formation of the Snyderverse, the booting out of Zack Snyder, Justice League, the civil war between Snyder DC fans and other DC fans, and the mess that had been created because of it. So that's all well and good, James, but when you're stepping into a fractious environment, you must tread carefully. In fact, James Gunn has trod in a fractious environment and made it an even deeper fractious environment. How? Let me explain. Number one, the removal of Henry Cavill of Superman. Now, I'm very, very sorry. I do apologise that I mention this every day. I'm sorry if you're getting bored of me mentioning it, but it's true. Basically, to remove Henry Cavill as Superman is one thing, but then to say that the four leads of this year's DCEU movies have all got an opportunity to be part of the new DCU is it is actually a type of, a fractious environment. It's creating an even deeper fractious environment. Nobody actually knows why Henry Cavill was removed as Superman. Instead of being honest and saying, look, we're never restoring the Snyderverse, never in a month of Sundays, right? Be honest, right? Be respectful, honest, and say, it's too complicated. What suit does Henry wear? The black one, the blue one? It's too complicated. He was Zack Snyder's Superman. That's why we're not using him anymore. But even if you do that, I suppose, then you have to justify why you're using Zack Snyder's Wonder Woman, and why Zack Snyder's Batman gets an opportunity to do a swan song in a Flash movie and Henry Cavill doesn't. So do you understand how you're stirring the pot even more by saying no more Henry Cavill as Superman? There was a little clip of him in the Flash, but we're cutting that as well, which they haven't admitted, but it's the truth. So, you've got rid of Henry Cavill, but you've said the four leads of this year's movies have got a chance to be involved in your new universe. And people are thinking, well, for fuck's sake, what's your problem, James? Why do they get an opportunity to be part of the new universe and Henry's Superman doesn't? One of the most popular versions of the character in live action in the character's history. Nobody understands why this has happened. Nobody gets it. And so, number two, he creates an even deeper fractious environment by cancelling Henry Cavill as Superman, but his Suicide Squad universe continues. By not rebooting the entire thing, he created an even deeper fractious environment. Because people are thinking, right, if the DCEU doesn't work, and it clearly doesn't because the past 5 movies have flopped, even the one in theatres right now, Shazam! Fury of the Gods, which is a perfectly acceptable CBM, but ultimately and regrettably, people have not supported it. They're the facts. I think DC fans are very good at supporting movies in theatres. I don't think that's the problem. I think it's the general audience not supporting these movies or supporting CBMs from connected universes, either in the MCU or the DCEU. People have had enough of bland superhero fare, if you ask me. By not rebooting everything and saying, do you know what? Being honest, saying, look, I'm proud of my Suicide Squad movie, but it didn't make any money. It wouldn't be fair to continue that franchise. That we were going to do that. That was my role here at DC, to build out a Suicide Squad universe with my movie, with my Peacemaker spin-off, and Waller. But once he came in, and they're trying to give this illusion of something new happening, but then on the second hand saying, well, Yeah, basically, Shazam could end up turning up in my DC universe, Blue Beetle. We'll talk about Blue Beetle and its upcoming trailer apparently this Monday a little bit later on. But yeah, so you're treading into a fractious environment. You've removed Henry Cavill, but everyone else has an opportunity to be involved. That doesn't sound very fair. And then your universe that you've already started to build up, the early threads of, you're keeping. So basically, his Suicide Squad universe is part of the old DCEU. So how is this a reboot? How is this a clean sweep? It's a semi-clean sweep. And basically it's the same idea as Walter Hamada had. There's nothing new here. So what James Gunn has actually done, he stepped into a fractious environment and created a huger fractious environment. Now, you don't have to agree with me. That's fine. This platform's not a dictatorship. If you do disagree with me, tell me why you disagree with me. But I think that James Gunn and Warner Brothers Discovery and David Zaslav have made the situation even more fractious. Now, like it or not, the Snyderverse stands are DC fans as well. You need their money, and they're not supporting your movies. And Shazam! Fury of the Gods and the previous 4 movies prove that their boycotts actually make a difference because they're part of the general audience as well. And so this is a hugely damaging situation. And don't forget, we haven't seen a James Gunn DC Universe movie yet. This is the time when you've got to get people excited. Now, it's true, a section of the fan base are very excited. I'm very intrigued to see what James does if we ever get to see what he does. But there are lots of red flags there, as I've discussed before, where he kind of didn't announce he was directing Superman Legacy. But then there's the situation of saying that Ben Affleck and himself were in talks for him to direct a DC Universe movie. Then in a THR interview, Ben contradicts that and says he wouldn't touch a DC Universe movie if his life depended on it. I'm paraphrasing, right? So then he looks like a liar. He doesn't address that situation. So he's basically stepped into a fractious environment and made it even more fractious. So he's not helping the situation here. And he's just making it worse and worse and worse every time he tweets, every time he posts. He says something dumb. We spoke the other day about how he reacted to misinformation about someone being kind of looked at to play Superman, saying I haven't even heard of him. And it sounded disrespectful. He had to defend himself. He kind of, every time he comes on Twitter, he seems to be digging a deeper hole. And so he has stepped into this landmine, that is DC, live action. It was a fractious environment, and now it's an even bigger fractious environment. I've said it before. The Snyderverse weren't really doing much. The fandom weren't fighting. There weren't really many trends, and they weren't really that huge. And then he removed Henry Cavill while saying at the same time that everybody else has a chance to be involved in his universe. For me, that comes across rather toxic. And as I said earlier, we still don't know why Henry Cavill isn't Superman anymore. Well, he kind of said out of context that we're looking for a younger Superman. Now, he's kind of saying, well, age doesn't matter. He's not necessarily going to be 20 years old. The problem is Gunn keeps on contradicting himself. It's not just about a question of talent and ability here. You know, one of the things I liked about Gunn coming in, and, you know, I was very dubious about the whole announcement, especially considering that Peter Safran was involved with the previous incumbent, Walter Hamada, and now he's involved with this. It's all very, very dodgy, and it just seems to me that it's the same people involved that were involved before in trying to do the same thing that hasn't worked. How can you get the faith, you know, the confidence of a consumer when you're stepping into a fractious environment and making it an even deeper fractious environment? And his decision making simply doesn't make sense. And I've said it before, the day he announces his Superman, if he ever does announce his Superman, because nobody knows what's going on at DC anymore, let's be honest. You know, you can imagine Twitter, unless it's the most perfect casting, people are going to go nuts. So for me, James Gunn is making a fractious environment even more fractious. The Ben Affleck Flash movie spoiler situation just took a twist. So Ben Affleck spoiled a scene from the Flash movie. We don't need to discuss that again because I don't want to repeat spoilers. But now many platforms are saying this is the scene that was cut. I suppose I do have to mention who's in the scene, and it's Wonder Woman and Batman. So Ben Affleck spoke in a podcast that he's in a scene with Wonder Woman. The rumours are spreading that this is the cut Wonder Woman Gal Gadot scene. So maybe I misjudged Ben Affleck because I had been saying that he leaked this because of Warner Brothers' Discovery desperation to get the movie to make a lot of money upon release. But maybe I was wrong. Maybe the reason Ben mentioned this in this podcast is because the scene has been cut and he's not happy about the scene being cut, mentioning it as, you know, it was the reason he found a better way to play Batman in his opinion. So is it true? Has the scene been cut? And is that why he's leaking it? It could well be. We simply don't know. I was always informed that any cut Wonder Woman scene from the Flash movie was from the ending. But could it be that in fact this clip, this moment of them sharing this scene together has been cut, and that's why Ben mentioned it in the podcast, because it did seem rather weird of Ben Affleck leaking a moment from a movie, and a pretty important moment, because we didn't know that, or publicly, you know, you didn't know that publicly. I knew it, but it wasn't, you know, in the public domain until Ben mentioned it. So it's interesting, isn't it? It is an interesting situation. And, you know, so this could be the cut Wonder Woman sequence in the Flash movie. So do I think that's the case? Look, I don't know. And this is what I'm talking about, because since James Gunn's come in, changes have been made to that movie. And by the way, just going back to what I was talking about, the fractious environment, you know, he fired Henry Cavill as Superman, but he's saying that Ezra Miller has a chance to be involved in his DC universe. Ezra Miller is an actor who's been arrested for really bad things, accused of doing really bad things. He stands there with a straight face and fires a guy who's respectable, law-abiding, and says, basically, an actor who's basically a criminal has got a chance to be a part of his new universe. I just thought I'd mention that as well, because it was my intention to mention it. So you see how messy and how he's made a fractious situation and a fractious environment even more fractious. So he really is digging himself a deep hole. So yes, that scene that Ben Affleck mentioned could be because he's actually not happy with the studio. It makes sense, doesn't it, when he said with the THR article that he wouldn't ever direct the DC Universe movie, and now he's mentioning this scene because he can't blatantly come out and start attacking them. So maybe through the press for his movie Air, which is getting a lot of plaudits because Ben is a great director, by the way, maybe he's finding a way, a clever way of attacking the studio, and maybe that's why he leaked that situation. Has that scene been cut? Well, there's only one way to find out: when we see the movie. Now he's leaked it. If we go there and it's not there anymore, we're going to know it's been cut. Very, very intriguing, don't you think? The subject of animated Snyderverse has reared its ugly head again via YouTuber Chris Svensson from Ping Pong Flicks. Now, I want to say that Chris is one of the reasons I started my YouTube channel. I've told you people that many times, but he is part of the side of the Snyderverse fandom who really are waving the flag of animated Snyderverse instead of live action. Now, I have nothing against seeing Zack doing, animated Snyderverse. Basically, I'd rather see Zack restore the Snyderverse in live action, and if he gets the opportunity to do animation as well, that would be really cool. But it keeps on rearing its ugly head, and it just divides the fandom. Zack knows what, a majority of the fans want. The Snyderverse to be restored in live action. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, Zack Snyder would do some blimming brilliant, great, outstanding, Snyderverse animation. I'd much rather see that probably than the average James Gunn CBM. Don't get me wrong about that. But there seems to be this aggressive kind of side of that fandom. And I mean, it's interesting. Can we call Chris a Snyderverse stan? I mean, his videos on his YouTube channel get shorter and shorter every day. He seems to really, he was great originally. He literally only spoke about Snyderverse or, different things like that. But now he's just, basically he chose the money over his own fandom. And that's understandable, we've all got to eat, right? There's an opportunity for Chris. He's made his platform really big. Good luck to him. I absolutely envy him in a very healthy way. But yeah, there does seem to be this side of, oh yeah, let's go for animation. And people think that animation is cheaper than live action. Animation, the way Zack Snyder's going to do it, isn't just, cheap old Looney Tunes animation. He ain't going to get a piece of paper and move it like that so the characters move. It takes time. You've still got to pay the actors. They've still got to do the job. They've got busy schedules. It doesn't really change anything, really. So for me, I'm not a supporter of saying, let's do animation instead of live action. But as I say, it does keep on raising its ugly head. And look, I don't know why they insist on it, but they do. Of course, Zack's been asked about this before, and he goes, sure, that would be cool. But I mean, what do you tell a lunatic but just pat them on the head and say, there. Zack is very well aware of what the fans want. So if he is in secret discussions to restore the Snyderverse, he's not going to say, oh, let's do animation instead of live action. I mean, look, let's be clear. It is an option. It is an option to do. And I think if you ask the fandom, what would you rather have? Live action or the animation? They'd say, the majority would say live action. Now, if you've got an opportunity to maybe do like the Atom character, because we saw the actual guy who becomes the Atom in Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut. Now, if you could do an offshoot, a spin-off in animation, I'm fine with that. But in terms of Justice League 2, Justice League 3, I want to see them in live action. Now, whether that's possible or not, and if it's not possible, and animation is just possible, right, that's the only option, then I'll take animation. But I don't think that's a more feasible idea. I don't think it's a cheaper idea. I think it's all going to cost money because Zack is an artist. And whatever he does is going to cost a lot of money. Restoring the Snyderverse is very expensive. So they'd have to be sure that they make the money back and then some, then a profit as well. I don't know the maths. I do know that Snyder is a very popular director. He's literally, he's got a group of fans that are so passionate, right? And that's in his favor. So no, I wouldn't want animation instead of live action Snyderverse. I want to see it done. It's not like the actors are too old to return as their previous roles. They all look great. Henry, Gal, Ben, Ray, Ezra, they all look great. So it's not like you can't do it. That, Jesse Eisenberg still looks great. They all do. There's no reason why they can't return. and do this in live action. And I'm stunned that a side of the Snyderverse fan base keep on insisting in this animation. I think it's the YouTubers, it's the elites. We've had Mark Hughes, the journalist, he keeps on coming back with this. It should be animated, it's quicker, it's cheaper, not the way Zack Snyder is going to do it. Because the whole point Chris Wong-Svensson was talking about is anime Snyderverse. Now, I think Zack would he'd do amazing Snyderverse anime. I'm not personally a big fan of anime. I've never seen anime, but I do know it's very, very popular. And there could be some money there on Netflix for him to restore the Snyderverse in anime. Now, if I heard they were doing that instead of live action, my attitude would be, well, it's better than nothing. It's clear we can't get the live action, so they're just doing anime. And I know it would just make people happy. I wouldn't kick off about it, but it is my preference to restore the Snyderverse in live action. It's not my preference to start fighting for anime Snyderverse or animated Snyderverse. If that comes in, and we probably will get Rebel Moon anime and animation. I think Zack's going to do everything with Rebel Moon. I don't even know if it's realistic to restore the Snyderverse. We're having a conversation because this animation versus live action debate keeps on coming back. As I say, if that's the only option, fine. But it's not cheaper, it's not quicker, and it's not easier. Not the way Zack Snyder would do it. The fact of the matter is, YouTuber Grace Randolph does not like James Gunn, and James Gunn does not like Grace Randolph, and it's kicked off between them again this week. Now, to be fair, I don't know what's been going on, and I'll tell you why, because Grace has me blocked on Twitter, so it's very, very difficult to see what's going on. Now, I think it all kicked off with this actor that was rumoured to be in contention to play Superman in Superman Legacy, and I think she tried to infer that he's a liar. The problem is the whole Ben Affleck situation, and where he claimed he was in talks with him to direct the DC Universe movie, has really made him look like a liar. But I don't really want to sit here calling James a liar without hard evidence. I'm not one of those YouTubers. Now, if it comes out, if you can prove to me that he's a liar and he's lied about stuff, that's fine. Now, Ben Affleck's statement of not wanting to direct DC Universe content does make him look like a liar, because Ben never even reacted to this, officially via social media or, visually when James said he was in talks with him. So it does make James look like a liar, but it also could have been a situation where James said, "Oh, Ben, would you like to direct DC Universe content?" And Ben straight out said, no way, I wouldn't be seen dead doing that crap. And then James Gunn says, "Oh yeah, I'm in talks with Ben Affleck," because I suppose structurally it is kind of, that's what happened. He asked and Ben said no. So it still could be that James Gunn isn't a liar. Now, there's a problem, because the further we go down this tunnel and this rabbit hole, the more he does look like a liar. Because there's the whole thing when Zack Snyder rang him up, which did happen, which Zack has clarified, and James has clarified, and Snyder's intention was to congratulate James on the first part of the Gods and Monsters DC Universe slate, which I congratulated him on as well, because it's a good slate as far as the words and the titles are. It doesn't mean he's going to do a great job with it, but the slate looks good. Now, Gunn went on Twitter to say that Zack rang me up, congratulated me on Gods and Monsters. He seems happy and he seems like he's moved on. So there's no blatant lie there. He has moved on in terms of making other content, but he hasn't emotionally, soulfully moved on from making Snyderverse DC content. That's a dream and a fantasy of Zack's, as it is mine and the rest of his fans. But he made it look like that Zack Snyder kind of told him, "You know what, I'm done with all that." So that wasn't very nice of James Gunn. So, as I said on the beginning of the video, he's come into a fractious environment and he hasn't dealt very well with that fractious environment. He's made it even more fractious. And I don't want to repeat myself why. You know why. The evidence, even if you're a James Gunn fan, you must admit He hasn't handled the situation very well. He's made, a contentious, fractious environment even more fractious. But it's really the situation of bringing Cavill back and then not bringing Cavill back that's created a mess. And people say to me, well, that had nothing to do with James Gunn. Well, if you actually believe he came into his position when he did, or maybe he was there before, then he's part of the mess. But it's not even about that. David Zaslav, Pam Adby, Mike DeLuca, told the world that Henry Cavill was back as Superman. It was done during the new leadership. You can't even blame the old leadership. They created this mess. You can't 1 minute bring someone back and then say they're not coming back. So Grace Randolph is having a very good time in stirring the shit about James Gunn. The reason that Grace Randolph, a failed former Z-list actress, loves controversy, because controversy sells. And she does very well out of it. I don't think that's the only reason she has a successful YouTube channel. I have to be honest, I think she has great film knowledge. I like her movie opinions when she's talking about movies and when she's not acting like a lunatic. But unfortunately, more often than not, Grace is very, very controversial. She likes being controversial. She's fallen out with Kathy Yan, the director of Birds of Prey. She's made statements that have been proven to be false in the past as well. But in terms of the situation, the question of James Gunn's honesty, I can't stand here and say he's a very honest guy, because there are situations where it does look like he was selling some misinformation. And finally today, there's a rumour going around that the first trailer for the Blue Beetle movie will be released online and all over the place on Monday. Someone yesterday on my premiere of yesterday's DC Universe Daily asked me if I'm excited, and I responded by saying I'm more intrigued than excited. Again, I love the Blue Beetle character. He's not one of my favourite characters, but I've seen him in animation. I've read him a bit. He is a great character. I do prefer the Ted Kord version, but that's just my opinion. But we're not using the Ted Kord version because he's a straight white male. So they're using the Latino version. I have no issue there. I love the actor from Cobra Kai that they've cast. He's very popular with the kids. So that's a great piece of casting by Walter Hamada, and I love the story of him meeting the actor at the restaurant and saying, I'm meeting you here because I just don't want to cast a name. I want to cast someone that's a good person as well. So I like that attitude by Walter Hamada, the former DC Films president. So when someone does something good, I'll say they've done something good. And if I don't like the decisions they've made, like there's a lot of decisions that Walter Hamada made I didn't like, I will say that as well. But we've got to be a balanced platform, or I'm not doing you the service as fans you deserve. So I am more intrigued than excited, but the more I think about the upcoming trailer, the more excited I get. Now, we've heard stuff like positive test screenings. I have not seen a test screening of this movie, in all honesty. But there's things like, I think half this movie or 3/4 of this movie is in English subtitles because they're speaking Latinx, right? So, which I think is Spanish. Am I correct? Anyway, if I'm wrong, again, please correct me for my ignorance and lack of knowledge. Now, yes, that does concern me that a lot of this movie will have subtitles on it while a foreign language is speaking, because for a lot of people, that will dilute what's going on. Now, of course, you don't want a bunch of Latino people just talking English if their main language, is Latinx, right? Or it's another language. I understand what they're doing here, and this is how they're going to promote the movie. Representation, inclusion, this is great, blah, 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 blah. It's what we get. That doesn't mean it's not going to be a good movie, by the way. And to be fair, to go back to kind of twist my way out of this conversation, I am a bit of a hypocrite because The Passion of the Christ is one of my favourite movies and nobody speaks any word of English in that movie. So maybe it's not fair for me to say, it could dilute the movie. But I do think that diluted the movie for a lot of people in terms of The Passion of the Christ. And some people just won't sit there watching it. DC need a win. I do have a gut feeling that Blue Beetle could be the win they get. I think that maybe even Blue Beetle may have a better chance than the Flash movie of being successful. But the Flash movie has a great chance of being successful because it's a Spider-Man No Way Home movie. Previous actors who have played these iconic versions of these iconic DC characters, obviously, Michael Keaton returning as Batman is very exciting. And people are saying this is a really good movie. And as I've said to you, what I saw was really, really good. But until I see a whole movie, I can't tell you how good that movie is going to be. So, yes, I'm starting to get hyped for the Blue Beetle trailer. And please let me know what you think of the Blue Beetle upcoming trailer. Are you excited? Are you more intrigued? Don't you care? Do you think this is the much needed win that DC may get finally? Let me know in the comments below. This has been Friday's edition of the DC Universe Daily with me, Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection. Smash the like button if you love me. Subscribe if you're new. And have your say in the comments down below. Until I see you again, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen.